Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about a touchy subject. It's unfortunate, but it's back in the news. And we have good reasons to be talking about it. I think this will be the first time I've ever really spoken about it on this channel. So now if you look at this image here on the right hand side, the guy on the left, Lewis Hamilton, he's clapping his hands. The guy on the right, Max Verstappen, on the main podium. On the top step of the podium, he has his fist risen. Now imagine if, you didn't know the context behind this image. Imagine if you didn't know the context behind this particular race. I wouldn't even call this race controversial. It's not that it's controversial. It is just daylight robbery, midnight robbery, whatever you want to say, but it's plain blank robbery. At a time when this sport had over 100 million live viewers, yeah, for this race finale, it was big. The podium, for this man to be standing tall, for Lewis Hamilton to stand tall, to not be weeping, complaining. He is serious. He understands. And to be honest, I wouldn't even say understand it. It's probably, you just had the biggest robbery of your life. You just had the biggest accomplishment taken away from you in the most unfair, unjust way. It hasn't fully hitten him yet. But I think these images, they speak volume. And I think that the problem is from the Max Verstappen side, the FIA is on his side, the race director was on his side. From their perspective, I don't think they fully understood what they did. But it's back in the news. And yeah, for various reasons, I won't say it's a controversy because it's way worse than a controversy. For those of us who have some idea of what happened that day, what happened that night, that race, you'll understand why it's a touchy subject on various purposes. But recently, we've had Natalie Pinkham. She's expressed her opinions behind what took place, and she said, I couldn't explain it to my kids. Now, keep in mind, Natalie, she is a F1 journalist. Her job is to talk about F1. Her job she's a presenter on F1. She's in the journalistic world, so her job is to understand these things and to be able to express them properly. She says she couldn't explain it to her kids. And the F1 community, mostly the Lewis Hamilton community, has not taken this well. Because I think even a child, many children, can tell what happened to Lewis that day was blatantly wrong in so many ways. This is what Natalie had to say.
I think one of the problems that I had with 2021 personally was I couldn't explain it to my kids. And if I can't explain it to my kids, how can we as broadcasters explain it to the viewers, the public at large? How can anyone really understand it?
Well, it's obvious to understand, but I'm going to start with my response, with my tweet. I basically said, so what I hear you saying, Natalie, is that you're struggling to explain this to your child that Lewis Hamilton was robbed without making the FIA, race director, and the Verstappens seems like the bad guy. Understand something. She works within this industry. She doesn't want to speak the honest truth because it's going to piss the people off. It's going to piss off Red Bull. And the last time someone pissed off Red Bull, they complained and said they didn't like booing. They complained and tried to boycott Sky. When people speak the honest truth about what happened that day, Red Bull, they complain and they will get you fired. Johnny Herbert recently got fired for doing his bloody job. So easy solution, Natalie. Just imagine if the roles were reversed. Yeah, imagine if Verstappen lost the championship. What was it that George Russell said? If the roles were reversed in Abu Dhabi 2021, Michael Massey would have to be running for his life. Yeah, I agree with that. The Verstappens would have killed him. But it's like I said various times. I don't know how much they were paying Michael Massey. I don't know. I don't fully know what really happened, but I know he knew what he was doing was wrong. But I think he decided, who would I want to piss off here? Would I rather piss off the Verstappens or would I rather piss off the Hamiltons? He decided to piss off the Hamiltons because Hamilton cannot just get upset. He can't get angry. He's not allowed to get angry. He's not allowed to express himself as a human being. Max Verstappen can act like a 5-year-old child at times, can act like a complete, nonsensical, arrogant, no control child at times. But if Lewis got upset about what happened in Abu Dhabi and expressed his anger and called them out on it, you know how they would twist and turn and change a narrative to their advantage. And that is the consequence of being a black man in this world, unfortunately. You're not allowed to act like a normal human being. You're not allowed to get upset and get angry. Yeah, you're not allowed. The same rules are not applied for everyone. And not everyone is going to understand this because not everyone is black. So let's continue reading into this a little bit. She said, one of the problems I had with 21 personally was I couldn't explain it to my kids. And if I can't explain it to my kids, how can we as broadcasters explain it to viewers? Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's like saying, I can't explain quantum physics to a child, so that means adults won't understand it. What the fuck is she talking about? She continues to say, how can anyone really understand it? Not at least all the protagonists, not least all Lewis, you know? It continues to say, so I tell you what, for me, most enduring memory of that day was seeing Anthony Hamilton go up and whisper in his son's ear, and to this day I never ask him what he said to his son. I don't want to know because it was such a private moment on a very public stage. But whatever it was enough for Lewis to walk up to Max and shake him by the hand, look him in the eyes, and I thought, my God, if anything we can take out of this is the incredible moment for children everywhere to see how to deal with adversity and to defeat graciously. Defeat graciously. Defeat graciously. No. Robbery. Robbery. They're trying to say that Max defeated Lewis. No. The FIA defeated Lewis. The Formula One as a whole never fully accepted him, never fully wanted him, even close on this grid. Never thought he was, in the right place, right color. Defeat graciously? No. That wasn't a defeat from Max Verstappen. The FIA did it. That's what they did. They organized it. They managed it. She also went on to say magnanimously, and I continue to this day, that Lewis walked away from that moment with more fans globally than if he'd won an 8th world title because of the way he handled it. Excuse me? He walked away with more fans than if he'd had won an 8th world title. You see the hypocrisy here that I have a problem with? If this had happened to another driver, let's say this happened to Fernando. Oh my God, Fernando wouldn't shut up about it. He would be angry all the time. And nobody would say, why is Fernando Alonso angry? He's not allowed to be angry. Fernando, you're angry. You're embarrassing the sport. No one would say that. If Lewis does that, they would criticize Lewis. All the way from Abu Dhabi to Buckingham Palace. I am telling you. And the presenters, the journalists, if they're supposed to, be neutral, stay fair in the sport, no, they can't. Because if they try to speak honestly, Red Bull complains, they get fired, they get told, don't say that, don't say this. Hold on a minute. If it's the truth, why can't they speak? So yeah, it's quite ridiculous, to be honest. She went on to say it was just incredible. What was so incredible about Lewis getting completely unfairly robbed and then he handled it the best way he could? But understand, they always try to make it sound that the way Lewis handled that situation, that makes it okay what happened. Then we can move on. No. No. That is even more arrogant. That is even more disrespectful. They're acting as if Lewis had a choice in the way he handled that situation. No. I wish you could have saw the real results of what happened, but hopefully they will experience it one day. And it's not about walking away with more fans. We couldn't give a shit about more fans. We don't want those fans. No. Team LH, cult LH, we will remain this way. She went on to say, yeah, no, and by the way, I didn't want to expect to get drawn into 2021 thing or take us into it, but I always say, as well as this wasn't Max's fault, like Max was a deserved winner as well. Excuse me, that's another hypocrisy that they continue to say, is that Max deserved it. Both drivers deserved it. Excuse me. That's bullshit. That's absolutely bullshit. They will continue for years to attempt to justify the wrongdoings. But no matter what justifications they drum up in their meaningless minds, it won't be good enough until they just admit that what happened was wrong and there's no excuse. But they're attempting to make excuses. They're attempting to say, but Max deserved it. Max deserved it. If Max deserved it, he would have driven cleanly. He wouldn't have brake checked Lewis. In fact, the brake check alone should have had him disqualified from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. But I'll continue. If another driver does a brake check in a championship battle, I hope they remember that They made Max Verstappen get away with it, so they better let that other driver get away with it too. But that's the thing, Max can brake check people. Very dangerous thing to do. No consequence. No one has ever complained about it since then. No one has ever kept him accountable. Well, thank goodness George will keep him accountable. I swear to God, thank goodness George Russell will keep him accountable. She went on to say, like you saw, some of the performance he put out that season. Yeah, that's another thing. They try to justify it and say, but Max was a deserving championship. You should have seen some of the performance he did that year. I'm sorry, the performance with the fastest car. You remember, Mercedes might have started the season with the fastest car, but Red Bull quickly caught up. Mercedes were heavily focused on the 2022 car that turned out to be trash. So they didn't really bring a lot of upgrades consistently to the 2021 season. Ultimately fell in Lewis. Mercedes failed Lewis in that. But as the season continued, they did bring one final upgrade, and I believe this was around Silverstone. And as the season continued, Lewis gets stronger. It was the last 5 or 4 race where Lewis really started to dominate. Lewis also had incredible wins that season also. But, they don't want to bring that up and say, yeah, they don't want to bring that up. Hypocrites, I'm telling you, they're absolutely hypocrites. And these are the people you would expect to be neutral. No, you cannot expect them to be neutral. You cannot expect them to be fair. You cannot expect them to just be real journalists, because they're in journalism, there's no such thing as integrity. I'm telling you that for damn sure. No such thing as integrity. Now, it continues to say, if you could have split the title in two, both of them were just as incredible champion that year, and it was a shame that it ended the way it did, because actually that overshadowed what an epic year of racing it was. You're right, it does overshadow it, but even more impressively, they've managed to get away with robbery. Mercedes couldn't even protest the previous season. If Mercedes and Lewis wanted to take the FIA to court, Mercedes would have to drop out of the championship fight for 2022. And Lewis thinking to himself, you know what, that 2022 car is probably going to be really, really good, so I'll get a second opportunity. I'll get a third opportunity in 23. I'll get a fourth opportunity in 24. The Mercedes car was crap. I want to say a lot worse, but it was crap. There's reasons for Lewis not going into a lawsuit with the FIA on that for various reasons, but also the fact that Mercedes just would not be allowed to compete, which is ridiculous. Because my question is, how can the FIA make such a judgment that in order for you to protest and sue the FIA, you must fall out of next season's championship? By the way, this is a sport that is owned by Formula One. The FIA is just a governing body. So who holds the FIA accountable if they can make such blatant, unfair rules and assessment and demands? No one holds the FIA accountable. And that's a fucking problem in motor racing. It means that they get away with everything. Because imagine if this happens to Lewis again at Ferrari. And they say, well, Ferrari, if you want to protest, if you want to sue the FIA, you're going to have to fall out of the next season championship. You mean to tell me Ferrari would have to leave the sport that they've taken participation in since the sport began? They would have to leave the sport in order to keep you accountable. It sounds more like you placed that rule in there to get away with whatever the hell you want, because no team is just going to leave the sport they've invested in so much for. Especially the money they've invested for the next season. It is ridiculous. The FIA is corrupted, beyond corrupted. It is beyond corrupted, with so much hypocrisy at this point. It's completely ridiculous to say, yeah, they both were incredible champions, they both, sort of trying to justify like they're both worthy of that title, but at the end of the day, it was Max, and Max was the deserving. No. Let's not forget. Let's not try to change narrative. Listen, if it was up to them, they would rewrite history, and the only way they're not going to be allowed to rewrite history is if we hold them accountable. But it has to come with real accountability, because right now the FIA cannot be held accountable by anyone unless Red Bull holds a gun to their head, which is probably not too far-fetched from what's happening currently. Or probably they're just giving them a pile of money, which, again, wouldn't be anything new in F1. It's called being a sponsor. You can sponsor the FIA. That's how Ben Salam got his job. Him and his people sponsors the FIA. That's how he got his job. And that's how he has so much power in the role where no one can stand up against him, no one can question him, and he can't really be fired. That is, it's a money sport. It's a money sport. And whoever have the biggest money, they control the sport. Right now, a lot of that money is not really coming from Europe or America. There's some money coming from America. There's some money coming from Europe. Europe used to be the main sponsor when you think of F1. They used to be the main sponsor. So the money, that's where it was coming from. That's where the money was being made. Currently, the money is coming from a different side of the world. I'm not going to go into that, but I think you already get the hint of where that money is coming from. And so they control the sport. And who do they support? Red Bull. Them and Red Bull, they're in bed together. They're in cahoots. They're in cahoots. A lot of behind the scenes handshaking is going on with a lot of cash flowing into Red Bull pocket. Because how Red Bull has gotten away with cheating, breaking the cost cap, how they've gotten away with so much things, no one can hold the FIA accountable. Even the F1 teams cannot hold the FIA accountable because there's just so much money involved and so much power involved. The teams are a little bit powerless, if I'm being completely honest with you. I got to say, Lewis going to Ferrari, it's not even about winning an eighth title because the cards are stacked against him. Formula One, the FIA, they will do whatever it takes to make sure he does not win an eighth world title, that he does not dethrone Michael Schumacher on that seven championship record. In all fairness, Lewis has surpassed that by now. He's not a 7-time world champion. In my opinion, he's not even an 8-time world champion. He's more like a 9 or 10-time world champion. If we were to account for the first season of championship they took away from him in 2007, if we consider how unreliable that McLaren was in 2012, yeah, I take into account 2021 and 2007. Those two losses, nothing to do with Hamilton, but suspicious circumstances. But once again, there's very few people in the sport that can stand up to this sport. Johnny Herbert is one. He was one of the first, if not the first, to call out the unfairness of what took place. But there's so few. There's so few. Most of them are just nodding along, getting their paycheck. Hey, I understand. You got bills to pay. I get it. But if you're going to say some nonsense that you can't explain this to a child, and if you can't explain it to a child, you think that means you can't explain it to an adult, that makes no fucking sense. But we're going to leave it there because I want to hear everyone's thought about this, because this is not the first time we've heard this sort of opinion and this sort of F1 take on the events of Abu Dhabi 2021. It's not the first time we've heard similar opinions. We've heard similar judgments being cast down. But for sure, it's a whole lot of bullshit. It's a whole lot of bullshit from a whole lot of people. I don't care who in this sport. George Russell was one of the first to call it out. And he called it out straight away on Twitter. So props to George. And there's been a few others. Ted Kravitz, he's also spoke very honestly about what happened in AD21. And again, they boycott Sky Sport. Sky Sport and Red Bull is like best friends, by the way. So for Red Bull to just boycott them, understand, that's sending a very clear message. Yeah, Ted Kravitz was speaking very honestly about AD21. And I am telling you, they cannot deal with it. The Verstappens, the Red Bull camp, the FIA, F1, I am telling you, as a driver, to have all of that against you, and that's what you're fighting. Not to mention when Lewis was fighting in 21, he was fighting all 20 drivers on the grid. Or, I'll exclude George and Bottas only a little bit. It felt like everyone was against him, holding him up when he was trying to overtake. When Max was behind those same cars, they just stepped out of the way. And again, it throws a lot of question. And that's why I look at the sport the way I do. That the sport lacks so much integrity and there's so much hypocrisy in this sport. But everyone will have their own interpretation of what happened eventually. Everyone will feel in their own way. Karma, if you want to call it karma. Justice, if you want to call it justice. But what goes around does come around. And I'll assure you, it won't it won't stay this way forever, but it will unfortunately stay this way for the foreseeable future because they're the one who have control and monopoly over the entire sport. But yeah, I want to know. I want to know what you think about her thoughts, what Natalie had to say. I disagree with a ton of it because, like I said, it's like saying if you can't explain quantum physics to a child, then you can't explain it to adults. That's got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my goddamn life. It's completely backwards. I don't understand what she's trying to say. It's completely ridiculous. But yeah, keep supporting Lewis, keep supporting Mission 44. You're seeing the things Lewis are accomplishing with Mission 44, trying to get more people like him from his background into this sport that lacks so much integrity and lacks, so many different voices who could have an opinion. And while they're at the top, they pretend like no one else can seriously compete. But the GOAT has always proven differently that it's not a lack of talent, but it's just a lack of opportunity for most of the people allow their kids to race in Formula One, and just understanding that they're not all going to make it, but yeah, the richest people get to do that. They get to enjoy that luxury. Well, Mission 44 is accomplishing a lot of things that some time ago was still a little bit of a dream, but now it's becoming a reality thanks to Mission 44. So thank you for watching, subscribe, and I will see you in our next video. Remember to follow us on Twitter, where we are. And thanks for all of the support with all of these F1 content. It's really been a privilege. And I will see you in our next video.